Hey everybody, this is Chuck Marone. Welcome back to another video edition of the Friday News Digest. I want to say thank you for all the good feedback last week. Everything was really nice and you were very kind and positive. There were a couple people who made a couple small complaints though. One person complained that I was blinking too much. I'm sure that I was blinking too much. It's the middle of the night when I'm putting this thing together. Someone else complained that my camera was cheap and it washed out the back of the office, which I completely agree with. My camera is cheap. We are a nonprofit. We are a cheap bunch of people. I do feel sad about you not being able to see the back of the office because there's something really fantastic back there, and I'm going to go grab it. This is the Beatles' Abbey Road album cover. Now, I have an awesome brother who works for a company that does prints like this. And he made for me, for my birthday, 3 Beatles album covers that grace the upper reaches of our room. Because of the cheap camera, you're not able to see the fine quality of art I have hanging here in the office. Hopefully we'll be able to fix that at some point. Story number 1. Our top story this week comes from the nation's capital, where a pair of parents are under investigation for allowing their children to walk unaccompanied by adults. On December 20th, Alexander Miteeves agreed to let his children, Rafi and Vora, walk home from a park about a mile south in an area that the family says the children knew well. They made it about halfway home when they were picked up by police. The Miteeves very controversially said they practice free-range parenting, a movement that's been counterpoint to the hyper-vigilant of helicopter parenting, with the idea that children learn self-resilience by being allowed to progressively test limits, make choices, and venture out into the world. The family remains under investigation and has had to deal with the Montgomery County Child Protective Services. One statement in particular just exquisitely captures the intelligence of these parents. Danielle said, quote, "Abductions are extremely rare. Car accidents are not. The number one cause of death for children of their age is a car accident." Way to go, parents. I hope that you get an award for Parent of the Year because you totally deserve it. Our second story tonight, gentrification. Gentrification is this horrible word in the planning profession. You get these rundown neighborhoods where artists, bohemians, hipsters move in. They start fixing up buildings, opening up coffee shops, making the whole place kind of funky. All of a sudden, the rent goes up, housing prices soar, and all the people that were there get driven out. Then this whole wave of hipsters is the next to get forced out, when all of a sudden all the lawyers and the bankers and everybody says, wow, this is such a cool, chic neighborhood, start to move in and take over. At the end of the day, poor people, minorities are affected as they get shoved out of these neighborhoods. Or so the story goes. Slate magazine reported this week on the myth of gentrification. It's extremely rare and not as bad for the poor as you think. Slate actually calls for dropping the term gentrification. Quote, "That gentrification displaces poor people of color by well-off white people is a claim so commonplace that most people accept it as a widespread fact of urban life. It's not. Gentrification of this sort is actually exceedingly rare." The story goes on to point out that gentrification doesn't happen very often. In fact, the most common occurrence in a neighborhood is stagnation and even decline. There are very few places in decline today that actually go through the gentrification process. It is quite rare. Instead of wringing our hands over gentrification, let's actually go out and build more of the stuff that's in such high demand. Let's go fill that marketplace with great places. Story number 3. This week on the Streets MN site, there was a map by Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy. The map showed which counties in the state sent more transportation money to St. Paul than they got back, and which got back far more than they sent. The map is heavily skewed towards the rural areas. Rural areas get far more back than they ever pay in. Urban areas, in contrast, pay in far more than they ever get back. One example, Otter Tail County, a rural county in Minnesota, an average family of 4 is going to get $221 more of transportation spending in their county than they're actually going to send in. In Hennepin County, home of Minneapolis, it's the exact opposite. $220 less than a typical family of 4 pays in is spent on transportation in Hennepin County. Hang on a sec. Put that map back up again. No, not that map. That's a map of the election results from the 2012 presidential election. I know it looks very, very similar, but put up that other map of transportation spending. Yep, that map right there. Explain to me again why Democrats are so anxious to have more money funneled into a central government system for transportation programs, while Republicans are so anxious to trim it all back. To me, I think if we gave everybody a little bit of what they wanted, we could solve a heck of a lot of problems here, couldn't we? Story number 4, the Swiss franc. This week in Switzerland, there was big news as the central bank decided to unpeg the Swiss currency from the euro.
The Swiss National Bank has staggered global markets with the shock announcement that it's abandoned its peg to the euro. The bank's decision to end the exchange rate control, which placed a maximum value on the Swiss franc of 83 euro cents since 2011, saw the franc soar by 30% against the euro.
What this move is going to do is allow the Swiss currency to actually rise while the euro weakens. The big concern in Switzerland is that while it makes imports a lot more affordable, it's going to make Swiss exports a lot more expensive. That may cost Switzerland some jobs. What Switzerland is being pushed to do, especially in financial circles, is join the currency war. The currency war that's going on right now around the world. But hey, you know what? It's nothing to really worry about.
So now the US dollar is actually at the epicenter, although shielded for the moment by the euro. And we're watching a threat to the whole fiat or paper money system. And that would create a mammoth depression and abject poverty for everybody.
Seriously, if you want to read a really good book about the currency war that we're currently in, the fiscal jockeying back and forth, the kind of race to the bottom of currency devaluations going on around the world, there's a book called Currency Wars by a guy named Jim Rickards. Really, really fantastic book. I've read it. Highly recommend it. And finally tonight, story number 5, Cadbury. Now, a lot of you know that I have the dietary preferences of a 10-year-old boy. Some very disturbing news this week out of the UK, where Cadbury has announced that they're changing the formula for the shell on Cadbury eggs.
Why? Why must you betray me?
Now, I was able to pick up one of these dandies, and I don't really know if this has the new, cheaper shell or not. I'm a little bit upset that they're going to regular milk chocolate is what they're calling it, as opposed to some sweet special mix that they use in a Cadbury egg. But I do have to say, Cadbury eggs are just about the sweetest of all Easter candies. And it really is pathetic that they have them out already before Lent has even begun. I will partake anyway. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a great week. Get yourself a Cadbury egg. See you back here next week. Take care.